Just had a couple quick thoughts that I've been working on, and I thought I would share it. Actually, this is the first group that I've shared this information with. It's kind of interesting, and these are kind of random thoughts, just some things that I've been seeing recently. So there's like three different things I wanted to talk about, but there's a lot of talk in the industry about personalized medicine. In particular, a subset of that is what they're doing with stem cell work. And not that I'm a doctor and knows all the details of it, but it's a lot of a discussion on how it affects the cancer patients. And in general, what they do is take the patient's blood out, change the DNA of the white blood cells, put the blood back in the patient, and then the blood recognizes the cancer as a virus, and the body naturally just kills the virus. Three different medicines were approved last August, which making some major changes on how they treat cancer. And the only reason I talk about that is because I think it will have some changes on how we build hospitals. They're not cheap, but just in the last few days, CMS approved it for payments. One treatment is $500,000, but it's 83% effective on multiple different types of cancers. So I say all that because I think what it will do is two things. One is that work that's done with the blood is under an FDA approval, so that falls under a CGMP facility, which for the pharma people, that's a completely different type of building structure as it relates to the clean rooms and the requirements that FDA require. It's just completely different than a hospital construction. For example, when you're done with the building, you have to turn in as-built specifications with every screw, everything that you put into that facility, what manufacturer you used. So I think what we'll probably see is more of these ISO clean rooms and more facilities that are doing this type of personalized medicine that will require this change in construction. Pretty interesting stuff, and it sure makes me hope anyway that we won't be building as many bunkers as we have in the past, and it sounds like this is an unbelievable. When I was walking around the Hillman Cancer Center in Pittsburgh a few weeks ago, the head of the facility, she was emotional telling the story of how she thinks this is going to change the way we treat cancer and how many lives this will save. So it's pretty exciting stuff, it sounds like. But anyway, so my next random topic is frequently when I go talk to an owner, they want to know what others are doing. And I think we as an industry could do a better job with collecting data, and I know that's a hotter topic now, data-driven design. It's HDR sells that a lot with their system. So what I've done is taken a look at the last 30 hospitals we've done in bed towers and looked what other hospitals throughout the United States are doing. We are currently building 23 bed towers, bed tower additions throughout the United States, and then we are recently completed the numbers of others. And I think the biggest trend that is out there is that the square foot per bed is getting smaller. Way I've been looking at it recently, because there's always this debate of what is the departmental gross square foot, what's the grossing factor, what's the building gross square foot. It gets very confusing. Just sawed off one floor of the bed tower on the med-surg floor and look at how many beds are on that floor. Now, if you have something unusual in there, you could take that out, like an air handling unit or conference rooms or something. But in general, just on a floor, how many square foot per bed? And we're continuing to see it smaller and smaller. As a matter of fact, on those 30 projects, over half of them, or about half of them, are less than 800 square feet in the 600 to 700 square foot range, which is pretty tight. I'm going to show you some examples of that. But that seems to be the way that hospitals are combating the rising cost. It's not just inflation, but the 2014 guidelines added cost, 2018 will add cost. And so to try to save money, still keep quality buildings, the thought is everybody just squeezes the building to to a smaller building. What that translates to is a column bay spacing of much smaller. We're seeing a vast majority of our bay spacing under 30 feet or around 30 feet or less. So what that does is obviously it squeezes the rooms between those two columns, making them tighter, but also it carries on down through the building, and it tightens up surgery and tightens up other parts throughout the building. So if you had a 30-foot bay spacing, with the new 2014 codes, if you're going to change that to an ICU in the future, ICU requires you to have the 1 foot clearance that they had, assuming you got a 7'6" bed and you have to have 5 foot clearance at the other end. You put two of those rooms side by side, the minimum you could do would be a 29-foot bay spacing and get those two rooms in and still be ICU in the future, or fit your ICU in there. So certainly wouldn't see it getting any shorter than 29 feet for that reason. I get a lot of questions, what are we seeing for unit sizes? 24, 32, or 36 beds. I was kind of surprised with this in the fact that it's pretty evenly spaced between almost a third, and a third between the 24, 32, and 36 bed units. There's a few of them that's just odd sized there. I don't know. I don't really see a trend going one way or another on that. I just see that it's just a lot of it has to do with what space they have. A lot of it has to do with just what the owner would prefer. But I do know my son's a nurse, and everybody talks about, well, it has to be divisible by 4 because the nurse oversees 4 patients. But that's not really the case. My son works, in tightening up and becoming lean, quote unquote lean, or making people work really hard, I guess is another way of saying it, is that he works in a step down unit, but it's just a med surg floor, and he's seeing 6 patients now. So he's running, and so I'm not so sure that the whole logic of saying it needs to be divisible by 4 stands as much anymore. There's some states though that have requirements that allows you to that tells you how many patients you can see, but most of them do not, at least on med surg. Then the next one I thought was kind of interesting also is that there was this trend about 8, 9, 10 years ago where people were going with the same handed rooms, and then there was that study that was done that said if you walk into the patient room and the patient's always on one side or the other, then the nurse will be delivering better health care because of that. But that's what the study said. So there was a big trend for years where people were going to the same handed rooms. But I don't see that as much anymore. I'm seeing that going back to the mirror, because you typically pay $1,000, $1,500 extra a room for the luxury of having the same handed. And I really see that same-handed. I'm willing to bet in the next 4 or 5 years that same-handed section will be down below 20%. I don't see it much anymore. Everybody's looking at saving money, and $1,500 a room, they'll take it. But with that, of course, there was always the discussion and the debate, and it seems to take hospitals forever to make this decision on using outboard versus inboard toilets, or on like UK was the side saddle. But we're seeing a lot of them more outboard nowadays, and I think that came with the idea of using decentralized nurses stations so they can get a better view of the patient. I think we're seeing a lot of people doing a decentralized nurse station where they have those little stations outside the patient room and do their charting there. And then the room size, it continues to get smaller. That in that 300 to 325 is the vast majority of them. And interesting enough, I go and see a lot of concrete. This one surprised me a little bit. A fair amount of concrete hospitals that we built. But when we went back look at the last 32, I think it was the ones 33 that we looked at. 94% of them are steel. And so it'll be interesting to see what the tariffs do to that. There's less, obviously, steel in a concrete building, not a whole lot less, it's about half, because you still got a fair amount of rebar. But for the steel, it was 15.6, and for the concrete, it was 14. So on average, it takes 1.5 feet on every floor. So, you know, that adds up in volume with your exterior skin and all that. So as time goes, if tariffs kick in and if costs continue to go up, I wouldn't be surprised if concrete makes more of a comeback, because you're just getting less exterior skin and less volume in the building. The other thing that I think concrete may be more helpful for is that in the 2014 FGI guidelines has vibration requirements. Now, the requirements were always in, but they put a lot more definition to them. And so it makes the building to want to be more concrete because of the less vibration issues. And then the one thing I was looking at is there had been a lot of discussion about putting the air handling units on each floor. In theory and energy-wise, it's a lot cheaper to transfer chilled water than it is to transfer air. So naturally, it makes sense to put the air handling unit on every floor. However, there's a lot of concerns about infection control and noise and the HCAP score with the noise. So we still see a lot and most of the air handling units up on the roof. Here's a couple of the 32, the tightest layouts. It's still a racetrack. So you have the patient rooms here. I think this is 18, 8, 10, 8, and 18, so it's 62. And then about a 29-foot column spacing, so you have 14.5 foot in each one of those rooms. They shrunk the size significantly. The entire hospital is 1,560 square foot a bed. That's in the entire hospital. That's by far the tightest one that I've ever worked on. But because they're able to drive the square foot out, they were able to make a very good quality building. This is the first hospital that I've worked on in which they had the HAI lights that kills HAIs, the Aspergillus and MRSA and C. diff. And so they put a lot of money into a high quality building, but they were able to save money by just driving a lot of square foot out. Their HCAP scores are very high and their HAI rates are very, very low. So, this is kind of an interesting layout. This is our one that's very tight, although the rooms are pretty good size. And I don't know if you can see that very well, but down here you have double loaded corridor, and then you just got the single loaded corridor here with all the central services here, and then go back to a double leaded corridor. That's a Gresham Smith design for Ascension Health. So I ran through that stuff pretty quickly, but the only other comment that I had is that we continue to see more and more projects being delivered on an IPD light type of scenario. In the last, of those 32 projects, there wasn't a single one that was lump sum bid. They were either CM at risk or IPD. And that IPD pie just seems to be getting, a piece of the pie keeps getting bigger as we go. We get RFPs almost daily that are IPD lights. A lot of people are getting away from the true IPD. The one company that's out there that does nothing but true IPD is UHS, and Mark told me yesterday that he's not going to do that anymore. He's getting away from it. He wants to go more towards a design build. It puts him too much at risk. Anytime it goes over on a true IPD, the money comes right out of the pocket of the owner. So it was kind of interesting. We have a guy that works for us that did his doctoral dissertation on comparing IPD jobs to non-IPD jobs and which ones have scientifically a better outcome. So he spent 3 years doing a study on 100 and some hospital projects and which ones had the better outcomes. And apparently in scientific study, if you have a significant outcome, that's I guess appropriately named significant, And and if it's in the 95th percentile, that's like a rarity. If it's in the 90th percentile of significant, then that's still significant. But so he found in both, it was well over 90, but wasn't 95. In common terms, I guess it's a 95% chance that using this IPD, when you look at all the other factors, was the reason why the project was done on time, on budget. The three things he looked at was quality, and he looked at quality as it relates to RFIs. He looked at schedule from the original schedule to the final schedule, and he looked at cost from the original cost to the final cost. And he said well over 90 percentile, it was a significant finding that the IPD projects created a better quality and a better budget outcome, but there was no schedule differences. So I just thought that study was kind of interesting. If you want to read 250 pages of it and need to get some sleep at night, you can Google David Kelly EMU IPD, and it'll be the first thing that shows up. So basically, that's it. I did want to say that in my as a project exec or principal in charge, I've done 12 IPD jobs. I could talk for the next 2 hours about IPD, but I think my time's up. But I did put a couple points here that I think are the most important for the success of an IPD, being that if the owner has to be bought in, you got to establish that culture is most important amongst the team, train everybody. I think the great tool is target value design, last planner, and incentives. I think is important to get everybody tied together. But thank you.